What's going on, guys? Jacob Ober here. So last year I did a video where I filled out a physical copy of the 2018 NCAA men's basketball tournament, and it was awesome, man. That was probably one of the most fun videos I ever made. Even though most of my predictions ended up being horribly wrong, including remember when I said that Virginia no doubt will beat UMBC. Obviously, that was the lone 16 versus 1 seed to ever win in that matchup. UMBC beat Virginia by about 20 points. I think it was like 74 to 54, something like that. But I'm going to be doing this again for the second year in a row. I have my physical copy of the bracket right here. And we're going to get started right away here with the Duke versus NCC versus North Dakota State matchup. I'm going to go Duke in this one over the 16 seed, whoever comes out of that matchup. Our second matchup, VCU versus UCF. I'm going to go with VCU. I'm going to take the 8 over the 9. 5 Mississippi State versus 12 Liberty. This is going to be my 5-12 matchup that I'm going to pick the upset in. I think Liberty gets the upset over Mississippi State. By the way, I hardly follow college basketball at all this year, so I don't know shit about any of these things that I'm talking about. I'm just picking random teams, kind of based on seeding, kind of not. But take it with a grain of salt, guys. And usually when you're filling out a bracket like this, the less you know, the better, because there are some years where there are some insane teams that end up going to like the Final Four. Something like last year, Loyola Chicago. Who picked Loyola Chicago to go to the Final Four? But anyways, moving on here. 4-seeded Virginia Tech versus 13-seed St. Louis. I'm going to go with 4-seeded Virginia Tech. Next matchup here, Maryland versus Belmont or Temple. I'm going to go with Maryland in this one. Maryland hasn't been playing that great, but I think they're going to get out of the first round. LSU versus Yale, the 3-seed versus the 16-seed. I'm going to go LSU in this one. 10-seed Minnesota versus 7-seed Louisville. I'm going to go Big Ten school here. We're going to put Minnesota over Louisville. And then for our final matchup in the eastern portion of the bracket, we're going to have Michigan State versus Bradley. I'm going to go MSU wins that one, setting up a Minnesota versus Michigan State game in the second round. Moving on to the West region, Gonzaga versus FDU versus Prairie View. This is going to be another one of those first 4 games for the 16 seed. I'm going to go Gonzaga in this one. I do think Gonzaga has a very, very good team this year, and I do think that, contrary to what a lot of people are saying, I think they do deserve a number 1 seed. They have only lost 3 games on the year, and they do have that victory over Duke, even though it was earlier in the season. 8-seed Syracuse versus 9-seed Baylor. Let's go with the 9-seed Baylor here. I think they're going to pull the 8-9 upset. Not much of an upset, obviously, though. They're pretty close seeds, obviously, the closest in the tournament. 5-seed Marquette versus 12-seed Murray State. Marquette did not play very well down the stretch of the Big East season, and in the Big East tournament, they only won 1 game in the Big East tournament. They should have beaten Seton Hall, but things didn't really go their way. I wouldn't say I'm really a Marquette fan. I do definitely follow them, not as much as the Badgers, and I haven't really followed the Badgers a whole ton this year, but Marquette, I'll always root for them. They're a Wisconsin team, as annoying as their fans can be when Wisconsin is playing them. I'll always root for them, especially in the tournament. So I'm going to go Marquette over Murray State, but that is going to be a very, very entertaining matchup in the first round with Ja Morant versus Marcus Howard, 2 really big stars for both programs. Both players are probably going to go on to the NBA at the next level. Moving on, 4-seed Florida State versus 13-seed Vermont. I've heard a lot of good things about Vermont. I'm going to pick the 13 seed to upset the 4 seed here. Vermont moves on to the second round. 6-seed Buffalo versus 11-seed Arizona State or St. John's. I'm going to go Buffalo in this one to move on to the second round. And then we've got Texas Tech versus Northern Kentucky, 3 versus 14. I'm going to go Texas Tech winning that one. 7-seed Nevada versus 10-seed Florida. We're going to go with Nevada in this one. Always wanted to go to Nevada, you know. It seems like a state that no one really cares about except for Las Vegas, but I don't know. It would seem like a cool place to go. Michigan versus Montana, 2 versus 15. Michigan going to win that, I believe. Moving on to the South bracket here, we have Virginia versus Gardner-Webb. I don't think Virginia's going to lose this time. I'm hoping they don't lose, because if they lose again and I pick them to win again, I am going to get roasted to hell. So we're going to go Virginia. I really hope they're able to win this one over Gardner-Webb. I think I actually had Virginia winning that tournament last year in my bracket, and they ended up losing in the first round against a 16 seed. Oh my God, I don't think anything in the history of the world has been worse than that. I got blasted on my predictions after that, I remember. 8 seed Ole Miss versus 9 seed Oklahoma. I'm going to go Ole Miss here. Even though I know the Big 12 is highly competitive, I'm going to go with Ole Miss out of the SEC. 5 Wisconsin versus 12 Oregon. This is going to be a popular upset pick. Obviously, you guys know I'm a big Wisconsin fan, but I cannot pick against my own team in the first round. I have to go with the Badgers here. Even though I know Oregon has been said to be a tough matchup for Wisconsin, I cannot pick against them in the first round. I really think they're going to win in the first round at least. 4 Kansas State versus 13 UC Irving. Let's see, we'll go K-State here. Move on for the 5 versus the 4 matchup there. 6-seeded Villanova versus 11-seeded St. Mary's. You know what's kind of interesting? Villanova won the Big East tournament, and they won the Big East regular season, and they beat Marquette twice, and yet they are rated a lower seed than Marquette. I don't understand that, even with a slight bias towards Marquette. That makes no sense to me, but I'm going to pick... Actually, you know what? I'm going to go with St. Mary's to win this one. We're going to pick St. Mary's to win this one. The Big East is not that great, I don't think, this year. I do think Marquette is a better team. I just thought that the seeding there was kind of odd to me, but both teams obviously very... or have the credentials to be in the NCAA tournament. But I'm going to go with the St. Mary's over Villanova for my 11 versus 6 upset there. Purdue versus Old Dominion, 3 versus 14. We're going to go with Purdue in that one. Moving on to 7 versus 10, Cincinnati versus Iowa. We're rolling with the Big Ten here. Let's go Iowa. 2-seeded Tennessee versus 15-seeded Colgate. Colgate. We're going Tennessee here. I just thought of Tennessee playing toothpaste. That kind of gave me a little giggle there, but that was kind of cringe. But moving on to the Midwest region, the final region of the bracket here. 1-seeded North Carolina versus 16-seeded Iona. We're going with UNC in that one. 8-seeded Utah State versus 9-seeded Washington. I'm going to go with Utah State because obviously the Pac-12 is not that great of a conference, and I feel like Washington is kind of a weak team. I've heard bad things about them. Auburn versus New Mexico State. Auburn actually, I think they won the SEC tournament. I'm going to reward them and give them the nod here in the 5-12 matchup. Kansas versus Northeastern. We're going to go with Kansas. 6-seeded Iowa State versus 11-seeded Ohio State. We're going to go with Iowa State there. State versus state right there. I do not like Ohio State, and I hope they lose. I've always hated Ohio State, especially their football team. But 3-seeded Houston versus 14-seeded Georgia State. Was Georgia State the team that beat Baylor in the 3 versus 14 and R.J. Hunter with the big shot with like 3 seconds left? I think they were that team. That was an awesome game, but I think Houston's going to win this one. Houston over Georgia State. 7-seed Wofford versus 10-seed Seton Hall. You know what? Oh, man, I almost want to pick Seton Hall, but I feel like I've done 10 over 7 way too much, so I'm going to go with Wofford in this one. 2-seeded Kentucky versus 15-seeded Abilene Christian. Kentucky is going to win that. Hopefully, please. Okay. I wouldn't be mad if Kentucky lost this game, because I do not like Kentucky, but I feel like I almost jinxed it there because obviously bad memories from last year when I said without a doubt that Virginia was going to beat UMBC. Obviously that didn't go very well. Coming back to the East region here, Duke versus VCU. I'm going to go Duke over VCU there. 4-seed versus 12-seed here in the second matchup, Liberty versus Virginia Tech. We're going to go with Virginia Tech here. 6-seed Maryland versus 3-seed LSU. You know what? Let's go Maryland. Going on to the Sweet 16, even though I know you've sucked lately. Go Maryland. Go represent Big Ten. Minnesota MSU Big Ten matchup here. I'm going to go with MSU. I bet you this is actually going to be a good game. It's going to come down to the wire, but MSU is going to pull it out. Gonzaga versus Baylor, 1 versus 9. I'm going to go with the Zags. 5-seed Marquette versus 13-seed Vermont. Couldn't be easier for the Golden Eagles. They are going to move on to the Sweet 16. Buffalo versus Texas Tech. 6 versus 3. We're going to go with Texas Tech. Nevada versus Michigan. Let's go Big Ten, Michigan. Moving on. So that was the West and the East regions. Now we're going to move on to the Midwest and the South regions, starting with the South here. Virginia versus Ole Miss, the 1 versus 8. I do not think Virginia gets upset in this round. They are going to move on to the Sweet 16. Wisconsin versus Kansas State. Boy, do I want to pick against the Badgers, but I don't know if I can. All right, we're going to go with the Badgers. Moving on to the Sweet 16. Wisconsin beats Kansas State. I have heard that Kansas State and Wisconsin is actually a good matchup. I thought they were a bad matchup, but you know what? I don't really know what I'm talking about here. We're just doing this all for fun. This is amazing to do every year and when March rolls around. So, St. Mary's versus Purdue. Let's go. You know what? St. Mary's. Let's go St. Mary's. Purdue gets upset. And St. Mary's is the 11th seed that makes it to the Sweet 16. They are the underdog story. Iowa versus Tennessee. We're going to go with the Vols, Tennessee. Moving on here. The final region here, Midwest region, UNC versus Utah State. UNC, Auburn versus Kansas. We're going to go Kansas. Moving on. Iowa State versus Houston. Iowa State. I've always liked Iowa State. I don't know why. I just always have. Because I guess I don't really like Iowa that much, so I like their biggest rival, I guess. But Wofford versus Kentucky. Kentucky moves on. Going back to the East region here, Duke versus Virginia Tech. Duke moves on to the Elite Eight. MSU versus Maryland. MSU goes on to the Elite Eight. This matchup is like Duke versus MSU. I mean, that's just, you're asking for that to happen. Everyone knows that it's happening. Hope I just didn't jinx myself again there, but going on to the West region, Gonzaga versus Marquette. Let's go, Marquette! Going to the Elite Eight. Marquette is going to the Elite Eight. Yes, even though they have sucked, I am going with the Homer argument here. Marquette gets hot. Marcus Howard could be the best player in that game and could be the best player in the entire bracket here on this side. We don't know. Marcus Howard, though, I think one of the best players in the country, should be getting even more consideration for the Wooden Award than he is. But we're going to go Michigan here in the Texas Tech versus Michigan matchup in the Sweet 16. Over to the South region, Virginia, Wisconsin. End of the line here for Wisconsin. Virginia takes out Wisconsin. Even though I think this is going to be a really good game, it's gonna be the end of the line for the Badgers there. St. Mary's versus Tennessee. End of the line there for them. Tennessee pulls it out. UNC versus Kansas. You know what? We're gonna go with the 4-seeded Kansas going to upset North Carolina, and they are going to move on to the Elite Eight. Iowa State, Kentucky. Kentucky moves on. So our Elite Eight, Duke, MSU, Marquette, Michigan, Virginia, Tennessee, Kansas, and Kentucky. Duke versus MSU. This is going to be a great, great matchup, and I know that everyone is saying that MSU has no chance against Duke, so obviously I'm going to go with MSU to win this one. MSU advances to the Final Four. Marquette versus Michigan. End of the line again, guys. Can't go with Marquette in this one. I think Michigan's completely better than them in every single way. I got to go with Michigan. Even though it would be awesome if Marquette made the Final Four. Virginia, Tennessee. Virginia, Tennessee. Oh, that's a tough one, man. I'm going to go with the Vols. I think Tennessee moves on. And in the Midwest region, Kansas versus Kentucky. Kentucky. As much as I hate to say it. So, our Final Four, MSU, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky. MSU a 1 seed, Michigan a 2 seed, Tennessee a 2 seed, and Kentucky a 2 seed. So I have 3 of 4 2 seeds moving on in this tournament bracket. So MSU versus Michigan. I don't know. MSU. I'm going to go MSU. Tennessee, Kentucky. Tennessee. MSU, Tennessee in our championship. I got to stick with the Big Ten. Michigan State pulls it out. And there's my bracket. 15 minutes it took me. Here is my physical copy. You see my final 4 there. I know it's kind of hard to see all of the things I wrote down, but that is what we've got in this one. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching this video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. And I am open to doing another one of these brackets because God knows I'm going to be doing plenty of them over the next few days here. This is just the first of many. I'll gladly do another one of these for you guys if you guys request it. But be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Comment down below if you guys want me to do another one, and if you have any disagreements with my who I'm going to pick to win. But anyways, guys, though, I'll see you guys next time, and go Badgers.